If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
Are back. I'm Chris Evan, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by my good friend Randy Nance, back home in Texas, combat wounded Green Beret, and below us our in-house CIA operative, Jeff MD, 26-year case officer, author extraordinaire, affectionately known as 007. And speaking of which, I don't know if y'all caught this or not. Somebody in the chat last night said, when I did a solo broadcast, said, I think what you actually need to do is call Khalid 00711. So
well, he does do those, that whole BFE thing.
Yeah. So I don't know. As long as it doesn't cause confusion between Jeff and Khalid, I guess we could probably roll that. Somebody's asking what happened to Saeed. So for those of you who don't know, Khalid was stabbed a couple weeks ago. It was much more serious than what he put out initially. He wanted to make sure he got down the road of recovery. Another half inch to one side, and it would have been fatal. So then it got infected, and then he had, ended up in the hospital, all kinds of antibiotics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We'll probably see Khalid back sometime next week as long as he keeps recovering. So anyway, tonight we are going to be discussing energy wars. And this is the next episode in our long war series, post 9/11 2.0. So essentially the struggle for fuel dominance, which will be battles over oil, gas, and rare earths, and destabilization of global markets in a post 9/11 2.0 scenario. But before we do that, we are going to cover the conflicted question of the night, conflictedthegame.com. These are 14 card decks set in post-apocalyptic scenarios. Oh, I just noticed I don't have the boys up here with me. There you go. We've got several different stage setups in StreamYard, and everybody has to be manually added to each one. Anyway, 14 card decks set in post-apocalyptic scenarios. Element of morality, hence the name conflicted. So here we go. After being attacked by looters, Gordon felt that his young son needed to know how to use a firearm. Gordon's wife, Samantha, felt that the boy was just too young and could do more harm than good with a gun. If you were in the same situation as Gordon and Samantha, how old would a child have to be before you taught them to use firearms, and why? So we will answer this question at the end of the episode. We want to see y'all's answers in the live chat and the comment section down below. I'm waiting to hear back from Mike Glover. He's possibly joining us in about 10 minutes tonight. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, let's get into this first one here. So we're going to set everybody's blood pressure off right out of the gate. Check this out. This is at the Vatican. They have enough mosques in Rome and enough outdoor spaces, but they need to provoke us at the headquarters of the Catholic Church to demonstrate dominance. Why is this tolerated? 33 seconds.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin.
I can't listen to that shit any longer. So coming straight to you first, Jeff, let me get you on the other stage. All right, there we go. What on earth are they thinking letting those clowns do that in front of the Vatican?
Well, it's in your face. And if we did the same, if you went to the biggest mosque in any major Muslim city and started doing preaching the gospel and having any kind of religious ceremony there. If you're a Christian, they'd freak out. But yeah, it's in their face, and it's basically confirming to the Europeans they're spineless, gelatinous masses.
So Jeff manages to introduce an element of funny haha there. Randy?
Well, the funny thing is you don't see them doing this in their own countries. I know Jeff has more experience than I do and been many more places, but in my experience, I never saw this either in Afghanistan or Iraq.
Okay.
And they did have plenty of mosques, and they had places, and they did them. Even people at work had one little private spot that they would go do it. They didn't do it out in public and in your face. This is exactly what Jeff says it is. And the fact is, it's intimidation. It's like, you're not going to do anything about it. We're about to take you over. This is what they do in the countries that they want to take over, just like we're seeing them do it here in the United States. I missed where that one was. I apologize. But regardless, it's what they do when they're trying to intimidate folks. And that's really all it is. So people need to see it for what it is. And although Jeff mentioned, you wouldn't see it in any major city. Hey, this is the Vatican. Certainly for Catholics, this is the most holy spot on the planet, besides really supposed to be Israel, right?
Right.
But the fact is, for Catholics, the Vatican is like it's where the Pope is. So that's the most important and most religious spot on the planet for them. And if you went into Saudi Arabia, which you wouldn't even be able to do, or let's say the Middle East, where they have it now on top of where the Christian temples used to be, Solomon's. And so the fact is, if you did do that, they would probably cut your head off right there in public. I bet they would in Saudi Arabia. That's Mecca. You know what I mean? If you did that in Mecca, you would see bloodshed, not people just letting it happen and roll on with it.
Yeah, it's interesting that you would say that, Randy, because that's where I was going to go with it. It would probably result in a beheading. So next piece up, we don't have a lot in our sit rep tonight. We're going to spend the bulk of our time on the main topic tonight, but white privilege means you'll face jail time for saying bad words to anybody who isn't white, but anyone who isn't white can stab you over bad words, and the courts will release them from jail saying you deserved it. So this young lady's checking her white privilege. 33 seconds.
White privilege means you'll face jail time for saying bad words to any minority, but any minority can stab you over those bad words, and the media and justice system will not only rule that you deserved it, but they'll let the actual criminals out of jail dozens of times. Your words will count as hard-hitting news, while their violence might get a mention or two in the tabloids. So, yeah, lecture me again about my privilege, because I've yet to find it.
Yeah, so kicking this one right back to you, Randy, since you're center age.
Well, I was like, tabloids, what is she talking about? There is no such thing anymore. The mainstream media took that over. That's their job now.
I reckon so.
So, I saw this story earlier and I thought to myself, but I think it was in Portland, right? Or somewhere up in the Northwest Pacific, that probably wouldn't happen in Texas. But you know what? I don't know, man. Today, we have to say we're in a weird spot. And up to the point, really at this, I don't care who you are. We're going to take a word off the plate, then that means no one can say it. I don't care who you are. And you certainly can't, inflict some kind of punishment on one segment of the society while you yourself or that other part of the society sing songs about it. It's in every song. They're constantly saying it, calling each other that. But, I just don't think, that's racism. That's all there is. And you can't fight racism with more racism.
You didn't get the memo? You can't be racist towards whites.
Well, that's those Ivy League elite people are the ones that came up with such nonsense. And I guess if you were the aristocrats and people that run around those circles, their life doesn't change in one iota. It doesn't matter what country they're in, who's in favor, power or not. Those people, their life doesn't change one bit. It's only all of us down here that have to suffer the consequences and also get to live the victories. But the fact is, right now, we're not living too much of a victory.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Randy. Jeff?
Yeah, this is the case where a guy got stabbed and then he called his attacker the N-word and he got in trouble, and the attacker was let loose because, oh, well, use the N-word. Yeah, after he stabbed me, at what point am I allowed to use the N-word? If he shoots me, bludgeons me, kills me, can the survivors use the N-word?
Never.
Yeah, it's just an insane policy anyway that, there is no, words are not violence. This is part of that words are violence BS.
Yeah.
And they're not. Violence is violence. I'll tell you what, I'll yell at you and then punch you in the face. Tell me which one hurts more.
Right. Well, listen, Jeff, I didn't put this in the brief, and I know this is a bit of an eye test. I'll try to zoom in on it a bit so that y'all can see it. But this is the global population expressed as a percentage in this column as Caucasians. So actually, it's a little higher. 33.1% of the global population in the 1910s was Caucasian. And when you come all the way down here to the 2020s, it says 15.1, but when you come over here, projected to be approximately 14% by the end of 2025. Sources vary 10 to 16%. I've seen a bunch of them that say as low as 10%, but
Well, that almost looks like a negative 14%. I know that's impossible.
that's a tilde key. It's a tilde key. It means
Approximately or about.
Yeah.
But still the pattern remains, right? Go back up to the 1910s, 33.1%, potentially as low as 10%. Let's call it 11 or 12%. It's almost, cut by 2/3.
Whereas things get more and more expensive and people have to work more and more for them, white people have had less and less kids.
Yeah, white people are having fewer kids, and
Yep.
people in the third world are having a ton of kids.
But also to the original story, whatever happened to the old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I mean, what?
It's racist.
Yeah, it is. I guess so.
2 + 2 = 4. That's racist.
I saw Jasmine Crockett said something, now I'll have to paraphrase, but I saw it today. It quoted her. She said something like, in cities that have less crime are racist because cities with less crime are have an over whiteness or something to that degree. Because there's more white people there, there's less crime. That's racist.
Well, that's called a clue.
Yes. In our world, that's exactly what it's called, an indicator.
Yeah. All right. So check this out. I think I've got 3 queued up here. Let me just quickly double check before we get into the main topic. Yeah, I got 3 of them queued up. So check this out. ICE is on a mission in Somalia, formerly known as Minnesota. Breaking: ICE agents pepper sprayed agitators blocking ops in Minneapolis heavily Somali Cedar Riverside neighborhood during Operation Metro Surge, targeting criminal illegals. Could somebody in the audience tell me what the heck all that white shit is on the ground, by the way? 1 minute, 25 seconds. Okay, watch this guy right here in the middle. See what he's got in his hand. He's an ICE officer.
Get off the street! Get off the street! Until you get. You got sprayed? Yeah.
So I got to do a quick audience poll here. JJ Carroll started this week on Monday. But thank you, Alaska Forever North. Started with ICE on Monday. There's approximately 3 weeks of onboarding before he gets in the field. If you can't wait to see JJ Carroll's first video of him doing that, put a 1 in the live chat, because I'll tell you what, I can't wait to see the video of JJ doing that. Although JJ likes to physically, mix things up as well. He's such a great guy. So, all right, back to the video.
You okay?
No, it's not okay. It's not okay.
What happened?
They put the spray in his eye.
Oh.
Look at this. Do you guys see this? Pepper spraying out the driver's window. I love it. I'm telling you, we are gonna get video of JJ doing that. All right, so we'll leave that one so we can get some commentary here. Coming back to you first, Ray. What are your thoughts of that? Looks like a fun gig.
Well, you know, I was thinking they're not getting paid enough for sure. One, to listen to all that honking all the damn time, man, that would drive me nuts. But it's because there's no support there, man. You know, really, if we'd have watched this at any other decade in history, even then get out the hoses and start blasting them out of the street with the fire hoses, you know what I mean, or anything else. They wouldn't be standing there yelling and constantly with their phones recording like somehow that's going to get them paid for something. I don't know. I think it's time to, well, we're just not dealing with it properly. So I guess it'll continue.
Fair enough. Jeff?
Well, they need to start hitting the protesters with chunks of ice. And then if someone says anything, says, well, it was a water cannon, but it's so damn cold here, it froze on the way to them. It's not our fault. We have no control over the weather.
I see Mike has joined us backstage. Let me get him in the conversation on this. Hey, Mike, how you doing? No, we don't have your audio. It looks like you're on mute.
Just kidding. What's up, guys?
Hey, did you catch the ice videos in Minnesota today where they're, pepper spraying the rioters and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I did.
What are your thoughts on that? It looks like a fun gig. And I don't know if you know, but our good friend JJ Carroll started as an ICE officer on Monday. 3 weeks of onboarding. He'll be unleashed on Kansas City in the next 3 weeks.
I saw that. I mean, it's necessary. I mean, there's chaos on the streets, and these guys obviously have gotten away with it for years in Portland, Oregon, and other places in the country. And it's time to stop. It's like, I mean, one, they should be investigating who these people are. It's like their full-time job. And it seems pretty rational that Americans can afford just to be full-time protesters. By the way, showing up at multiple protests and being proven on good media, actual journalism that I'm watching all over the internet of people calling these people out because they're career professional protesters, agitators.
Agitators, yeah, for sure. Did you catch that they raided a couple of Somalis' homes that the local authorities refused to put a detainer on them, so they couldn't capture them at the jail. And when they went to their houses, they caught like a whole bunch of extras with it. And the one ICE guy is saying, well, if you had just given us the detainer, we would have picked the one guy up, but you didn't. So we went and picked up picked them up at home, and we caught half a dozen other people there, is what it is.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's necessary. I mean, if you believe that this is an isolated incident, the entire country is saturated with illegal immigrants, a lot of them criminals that are destroying our country. And again, he's just promising and following through with all of his campaign, what would mostly be rhetoric. He's just executing what he talked about he would do. And that's good to see.
Just out of curiosity, I've asked JJ Carroll and others what they estimate the number to be. How many illegals in our country do you think? What's the range?
The range is anywhere from 11 to 20 plus million. I've heard as high as 22 million, but it's somewhere in there. And I mean, even if it's just a small percentage of malice intent troublemakers, Lord, that's a lot of people. I mean, regardless.
Yeah, it sure is. All right, let me get you up over here. So this is the next video. I've got two more videos before we start the main topic of the night. ICE is hitting Minnesota hard. Armed raids on Somali heavy properties. The Somalia deportation surge has officially begun. Do you support deporting all illegals? And he goes on, all Muslims. Let's just say all Somalis for this one because it's Minnesota specific. If you think all these Somalis need to be sent home, put a 1 in the live chat. If you think we should keep them, put a 0 in the live chat.
You will be held accountable for your actions. You will be held accountable for your actions. Stop!
You're on Maple.
You think it's your thing? Being able to burn these victims and get normal civilians?
That's what T, let's move.
Sir.
Go back, go back.
Sir. Do not attack the agent! Do not attack the agent! I'm trying to help! Okay? 608, 608. Sir.
Any more left back there?
I'm going to go ahead and stop it there. Coming right back to you, Mike, since you're center stage. What happens if somebody lets off a live round in a situation like that? How bad, how far south does it go?
That's the worst case scenario, and I think it's more probable than ever been. I mean, that's what's next, right? You escalate so much violence where, you know, I've seen the video where an old man just accidentally comes into another crowd of agitators and they release the engagement like they're on the right side of history. Like it's a violent agitator riding into a protest when it's an old man who's obviously lost and scared out of his mind because they're yelling Allah Akbar as they smash on the window of his vehicle in America. This is not happening on the streets of Somalia or Yemen. This is happening in downtown America. And it's like, that's next, because if these agitators are organized and they're violent enough to send around in law enforcement's direction, it's going to be a bad day. You take that and add the National Guard as a component, it's already happened. And little has been talked or discussed about it, by the way, because it's like we just glossed that over. I mean, it was in the news cycle for all of 6 hours.
You and Randy know better than anybody out there that when you guys were deployed, you had to account for every round that was fired. I know a bunch of guys like Mike Sterling, the first thing he used to do is when he got out of the base, he would find an AK-47 and carry that in addition to his AR, so he didn't have to account for any ammo he might have popped off. And I understand that was fairly common. What are the rules of engagement in that scenario, Mike? Like somebody takes a shot at the cops. Let's say it's multiple shots. What are the rules of engagement for the cops?
Well, they have to find and identify the threat. That's why it's such a precarious situation for them. It's not like in Afghanistan or Iraq where, you know, I've been ambushed in Iraq, for example. We received RPGs, machine gun fire, and we death blossomed to get ourselves out of harm's way because we're driving at 2 a.m. and everybody around us is free game because they're middle-aged males trying to kill us. When America, it doesn't work that way. So if there's an agitator intelligent enough to send rounds in their direction with a long rifle, for example, they could be dropping law enforcement officers and they'll be helpless. They might perceive everybody around them as, you know, they might perceive protesters who are agitators who were yelling at them prior because they're looking at movements of hands. They don't know where the rounds are coming from. And you have the perfect recipe, I think, for disaster and something really bad happening. Again, I've always talked about this. If law enforcement are engaged and law enforcement winds up killing, let's say it's a protester that wasn't armed, just that getting out as propaganda and getting more people to hit the streets and create more violence, that is a real precarious situation. And that's where we will see the brink of a civil war.
2 quick questions before I go to Randy and Jeff. I'm assuming a death bloom means that you pray and spray in every direction.
It's actually a deliberate tactic. A lot of people don't realize that. It's called suppressive fire. Suppressive fire is putting out rounds where we think the enemy is, 1, to break contact, 2, to elicit a response. It's like throwing a flashbang into a room. It's necessary to elicit a response, potentially get them to bug out so they expose themselves or keep their head down so you can break contact. So a death blossom is suppressive fire in all directions.
That's awesome.
And kudos to Mike for using Death Blossom, which is an homage and a reference to The Last Starfighter, one of the most underrated sci-fi movies ever made.
Thanks for adding that.
That's where it came from, for sure.
Absolutely, it did.
That's
but
awesome.
You can only use it once.
So before I go to Randy and then Jeff, let me give you another scenario for you to speculate on, Mike. What happens if these events are in a blue city where the cops have been ordered by the mayor to protect all people, whether they're illegal or not, and you end up with city PD and the feds shooting at each other because of whatever miscommunication coming out of nowhere. I mean, where's that go?
I actually broke a pretty significant piece of history in my podcast, and that hasn't happened often. But Pete Labor, who wrote The Men, The Mission, and Me, a Delta Force troop commander who is also a Ranger PL in Panama, literally told me that a piece of significant Panamanian history in a gunfight that was one of the most significant gunfights in Ranger Regiment's history up until that point was actually a blue on blue between a group of Navy SEALs and a platoon of Rangers. Now, nobody was killed, but that hellacious gunfight that's marked in the Infantry Museum at Fort Benning, Georgia, it's literally got a billboard. He admitted that it was likely blue on blue. It happens all the time because if you think about it, especially with law enforcement, the feds, like Special Operations Command, could be operating not directly communicating with local law enforcement. Take Big Army that's operating on the ground, and then you always get this misperception of threats, and you get some potential shooting at each other. It's very feasible that that could happen.
Yeah, it's scary stuff. By the way, my youngest son's serving at Fort Benning. He's been there for a few years. Randy, tell me a death blossom story. This is new vernacular to me. I love it. I learn a new phrase every time I talk to Mike Glover. Well, by the way, Father Duck donated $50 here. I got to give him props. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Father Duck.
You're very generous, man. Thank you. And Jeff just bought us another round too. Thank you, Jeff. Sorry.
Well, a different Jeff 2112. First thing I was going to say was, when Mike was talking about the paid protesters or how these people afford it, somewhere a few weeks back I saw where they're getting paid anywhere. Some of these, certainly the ones that are showing up at multiple locations, are getting paid somewhere between $86,000 and $116,000 a year to do this, and then they probably also pay for the travel, I would bet.
Wow!
And so that's how these people are able to afford to do that, and then it's just a matter of recruiting other folks.
Wow!
So when it comes to the death blossom, even in the infantry, right? When I was in the regular infantry, you learn about that because it's part of infantry tactics, both constructing but also surviving one, or at least making a good attempt to. And he's exactly right. It's what they teach you from the basic tactics all the way into special operations. It's always about, and so in the infantry, that would be your heavy gun squad or team would be the ones that would open up, because you all would open up. Everybody opens up instantly, certainly trying to identify targets, but also to suppress the fire. But that's also when you, as we talked about previously, it's been a while, but you want those big guns. You want your 240 and your saws up and mowing, right? You want them things wide open and putting down, because those are your casualty producing weapons. They're the highest rate of fire, and they're machine guns. So, that's definitely what you would want to use. By the time you get to special operations, and certainly during the GWAT years, it was all about vehicle mounted. So most of the teams I know, we had 50 cals on the top of those Humvees. And you get those things open up and talking, and man, I tell you what, talk about clear a lane.
Just out of curiosity, how many rounds would you have had, like with a 50 mounted to a Humvee, or did you have different vehicles?
Well, they're all different vehicles, but like for the teams that your average team in Iraq or probably even Afghanistan had a 50 cal. Some may have a Mark 19 up there, but generally it was a 50 cal. And since it's on a vehicle, you got 2, 3, maybe even 4 or 5 ammo cans. And these things, you've heard the term, like for a 50 cal, that's where the term "give it the whole 9 yards" is, because it's 27 feet of ammo.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And the way that works, like certainly when I was in the back seat, when said gunner runs out of ammo, you just open the next can, hand him the tip, he feeds it in and keeps firing if necessary. And so, if you come under an ambush, you definitely have to come out fighting and get off the X. And one way to do that is suppressing fire. And that is, your volume of fire should be high and suppress the enemy's fire. That way you can, some of you, and hopefully all of you, but that's generally not in a good ambush. That's not the way it works. But at least some element of you should be able to survive. And that's kind of how that rolls.
That's awesome. Just in case I haven't said it lately, I appreciate you and Mike and Jeff very, very much for bringing all this information. And by the way, our friend Father Duck, I got to tell you, this guy is so generous. He sent Randy a beautiful Yaesu mobile radio.
Yeah.
He's just the guy gives and gives and gives. Thank you very much. Absolutely. So Jeff, last but not least, I'm guessing that the CIA doesn't get into like death blossoms or.
Well, the ground branch guys sure did. I didn't. I avoided getting my ass shot. There's a reason for that. It's like when you talk about a 50 cal, it's really hard to hide from a 50 cal because you think you're hiding and the bullets go right through the wall or through the house or through the car or through a couple houses. So stay away from that. I've been in where we've been out on patrol and we were with SF guys, and there was always a guy on the roof with a saw, and we were driving civilian vehicles, so it wasn't really set up for a mounted one, but we did. We had the top back, and he stood up there, and he had a saw, and we were at a roadblock once, and some kid's pointing the gun right at me, and the guy above me goes, "Don't worry, sir. If he fires, I'll cut him in half." And I said, "I'll already be dead because he's pointing his weapon right at my face." So good to know. But I think the problem we're going to see, and what might happen in like Minneapolis and things like that, you're going to get some idiot who's going to take a shot at the cops. And it'll be like maybe a cluster of 6 people, 6 protesters, and one of them will draw a weapon and fire. And the police will see him draw the weapon and fire, and they'll return fire because they've identified the threat. But you got 6 people standing right there, and there might be people behind him. And even if you get the guy who shot, there's a good chance you may hit someone behind them or hit someone next to him, in which case they're going to go, "They're mowing down innocent civilians." Well, innocent civilians that are standing next to a homicidal idiot with a gun. But I think that is probably the most likely situation where it's going to happen. And they may do it on purpose.
I don't know if you remember me saying this before. I don't know if I've ever mentioned it when you've been on, Mike, but when Biden left the $7 billion in small arms behind Afghanistan, I got a buddy of mine who's an international arms dealer. And his former father-in-law was the Minister of Defense in Pakistan. And he's screenshotting this app in Pakistan. They're visiting family, and Doug's American. And you could buy M249 saws that we left behind in Afghanistan for under $1,000. I said to him, I said, "I'll take 3 of them." He said, "Yeah, right. Good luck getting across the border with that." But anyway, one last video, then we're into the main.
Well, they had free shipping though, right?
Right to jail.
This time last year, you could have just walked it across the border.
Oh, this is true.
That's right. That's right.
You were just too slow.
Yeah.
All right. Last one here from Somalia. ICE is carrying out full-scale raids at group homes full of illegals. Group homes near Minneapolis. Multiple illegals are arrested in this one house per Fox 9. Keep this up, ICE. The American people have your back. Hey, wait a minute. Randy, does he owe you like a royalty for saying, the way he phrased that there?
Man, I don't know. That's awful close, isn't it?
I don't know if you know it. I don't know if you know this or not, Mike, but Randy has trademarked the term "real American." So when we say it, we have to go "real American" TM Randy Nance, and he collects royalties every time somebody says it. I actually have emails from our followers asking where to send the royalty check to. I'm not joking either.
I'll send you my address.
PayPal. Use PayPal.
All right, last bit. No, they'll friggin' steal your money. Minute 38 seconds.
Shields up and guns drawn. Ring surveillance video shows more than a dozen armed federal agents.
Hold on a second. I got to ask Mike and Randy, when you see shit like that, does it make you want to get back in the game by chance? Mike?
Not really.
No. You've done enough. Well, I'll take the snow away. But Randy,
I was thinking the same. I was like, man, it looks awful cold right there.
Okay, let's pretend it's like 50 degrees warmer. Anyway, all right.
Agents descending on a Burnsville home on Saturday. A woman who lives there tells Fox 9 multiple Latino people who rent rooms there were arrested by ICE after being followed home from the store. A portion of the video shows one man being taken down in the driveway and another woman running inside to her child. We're told the 4 people taken into custody are now being held in immigration facilities out of state. That includes the parents of a 7-year-old boy.
You shouldn't be rolling around in unmarked vans. People have the right to know who's following them, and you can see there's fear in the people that are getting up.
Whoa. Does anybody want to weigh in on that? People have a right to know who's following them. Mike, you got anything? I'll just go straight down the column here. Actually, well, yeah, Mike, go ahead, and then Jeff, and then Randy.
Look, these are deliberate operations against illegal immigrants. I mean, look, if they're casing somebody and they're doing reconnaissance, they're not going to obviously alert them to who they are. Now, if these guys are hitting targets and they're hitting dry holes or they're rolling up American citizens every time, well, that's problematic. Well, these guys have 4 guys in custody because they're likely 4 targeted, deliberate operations they had conducted to go after these guys, and they got rolled up. I mean, again, like, this is rampant. It's happening in Heber City, Utah. It's happening all over America, and I'm seeing it in my own backyard. So it's something that needs to be addressed and dealt with, or not, and we'll just be a third world country. I mean, that's where it goes. I mean, you see what's going on in Minnesota. You see what's going on in Dearborn, Michigan. I mean, I don't want this. I don't want Sharia law to be the next phase of operations in America.
What do you think of that senator's assertions that people have a right to know who's following them? Where is that in the Constitution?
It's not a deliberate operation that's targeting you as a person who's committing a crime by being here illegally. I don't get why they don't understand law and order. And I've also seen how they've backed off a lot of the rhetoric because Americans overwhelmingly support, the majority of Americans support these activities, rolling these illegal immigrants, a lot of them criminals, up. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It happens all the time in Utah. The DUI that killed 2 innocent people a week and a half ago. People are talking about that, like the person potentially could be an illegal immigrant. People that are on the right side of history here are in fear of this becoming more of an issue, and they're happy that people are being followed and rolled up deliberately. Again, if it was a dry hole, if it was American citizens getting rolled up and in the mix, I would have a problem with that, but it's not.
Yeah, exactly. Just a quick thank you to Alaska Forever North. That's twice tonight. And Randy, he's got your back, by the way. He's covering the trademark fees there. So Jeff, coming to you, I want to hear what your thoughts are on, the senator's assertions that people have a right.
He's obviously an idiot. I mean, because what next? Hey, you're an undercover cop trying to do a drug sting, but you got to have on your car undercover police vehicle.
Right.
How stupid is that? And it's going to be more dangerous if you run around in a vehicle that says ICE on it, and then you try and pull somebody over. They're going to say, holy crap, it's ICE behind me, and they're going to go blowing out of there. And you're going to get in a high-speed chase in the middle of town. They're going to run over some kid. Whereas if you follow the guy and he doesn't know you're back there, the minute you can corner him in a cul-de-sac or at an intersection or something where you can't go anywhere, it's much safer to make that stop than to roll up on him, lights flash, run, and he can just put the pedal to the metal and bolt, and then you're going to get people killed that way.
Yeah, well said. Randy, do you want to weigh in, or do you want the next question?
Jeff took exactly what I was going to say, at least the first part. You know what I mean? Literally. What are you going to now let all the criminals know, whether the murderers, rapists, or drug dealers, that law enforcement's following them? Come on. You guy's an idiot.
Completely. All right, let's get back to this.
Out of the car in that video.
Former state senator and Lakeville Mayor Matt Little is running to represent this district in Congress. He said he's troubled by what he saw in the video and wants people to know their rights.
They certainly have a right to a hearing. They certainly have a right to a lawyer. They have a right to contact people in their lives that could help them out. You have all these rights, so make sure you're.
Jeff, just quick. Do illegals, are they actually afforded all of the protections under the Bill of Rights and Constitution?
Well, no, not all of them. But even with this guy, what he's missing is most of the people that ICE is going after have deportation orders, meaning they've already had their day in court. They've been before an immigration judge, and the immigration judge deemed them deportable. And then the local idiots in these sanctuary cities cut them loose rather than pay attention to the ICE detainers. They should have been gone a long time ago. There's guys, well, that Garcia, the one that they were drinking margaritas with down in El Salvador.
Right.
He'd been to court. He had been adjudicated. He had been found deportable. He had an order of deportation. He already had every bit of due process he was entitled to, and probably then some.
But he was a Maryland man. What do you mean? So, all right, we're almost at the end of this.
Showing up and letting your neighbors know that they have rights.
Now, I did reach out to both DHS and ICE for more information about what exactly happened on Saturday, but I have not heard back from either of them yet. In the wake of this raid, the city of Burnsville did release a statement saying that they are aware of the immigration enforcement activities happening within their city, but that federal authorities, they often don't let local authorities know when these enforcement operations are going down, and that their officers do not check people's immigration statuses. Reporting live tonight, Mary McGuire, Fox 9.
Yeah, crazy stuff. So that's it for the sit rep. We'll get into the main topic now. And let me just get my notes back up here. So for people who are just joining us, there's a little piece of context I have to give you, and I'll get through it as quickly as I possibly can. This is a 144 series called The Long War, and each episode stands on its own, but there's one piece of context that you have to have. And once you have that piece of context, you can watch any episode, any order. You can watch some, all, or none, whatever, and you'll still get value out of the ones that you watch regardless of the order. So 9/11 2.0, the intelligence basically says that all of these jihadis that walked across our southern border are poised to attack 10 to 15 tier 2 American cities simultaneously. So population 100,000 to 500,000. Each of those cities will have 10 to 15 sleeper cells. Each sleeper cell will have 4 to 12 jihadis. Do the math, it's somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 jihadis attacking soft targets. They'll start with places like schools, and then they'll sit and wait for the authorities to show up. And then they'll let off VBIEDs, so vehicle-borne IEDs, to kill as many first responders as they possibly can. Keep in mind, a tier 2 city doesn't have major centers around it typically where they can call in mutual aid. Then they'll continue on their path of destruction until they get to the tier 1 trauma center. It'll be the only tier 1 trauma center in those cities. So it's a psychological effect, sieging a hospital. It means that people who are injured will have to be triaged. Not everybody will be able to be saved because the next tier 1 facility is going to be some distance away. And you're also going to have, like I said, a bunch of first responders killed. There's been a record number of thefts in the past 2 years for police uniforms, paramedic uniforms, National Guard uniforms. So just like 10/7 and multiple other terrorist attacks, the bad guys will pose as first responders. And if you remember nothing but this one thing, God forbid that you're anywhere when the first attack happens, but if you are and you survive, the human brain has this thing called normalcy bias, and it means that we strive to get back to normal as quickly as we possibly can. Don't let that make your decisions for you. Get as far away as fast as you possibly can. Do not trust anybody that you see because they're lying in wait, and the secondary and tertiary attacks are going to be even worse than the primary attacks. You've got to get as far away as fast as you possibly can. If you don't remember anything else but that, and you share that with your circle, then part of our mission's been accomplished. So with that being said, that's the context. And for tonight, we're looking at essentially an energy siege. America's grid, our grid, we've talked about this at length. We have 3 grids, East, West, Texas, 55,000 substations. For 30 years, one party or the other has put a bill forward in Congress to fortify it. Cost would have been around $5 billion last time around. Of course, government projects always overrun, but $5 billion is, it's a lot of money. But in the grand scheme of things, compared to what we gave to Zelensky, it's a drop in the bucket, and it never gets voted in place. So we're a first world country with a third world power grid, essentially. And when you take electricity down, and there have been all kinds of people who've war gamed this out, the numbers are staggering. If our power goes down, for 30 days, the numbers are somewhere in the range of 40-50% of Americans will be dead because all the people who rely on things like insulin, it's no longer refrigerated, et cetera, et cetera. But at the 6-month mark, there's lucky to be about 25 to 30% of Americans left living. And this is a major problem, not only because of all the people who depend on it, but we don't make our transformers. So small transformers, 12 to 18 months lead time, but LPTs, large power transformers, they're upwards of 5 years out, 60 months out. So when you take down big sections of the grid, it's not something you just flick a switch, replace a part, and you're good to go. Most of our transmission lines are 200,000 volts. We have a number of them, though, across the northern part of the country. They're like 700,000 volts. If somebody takes away all the safety mechanisms and shunts 700,000 volts down a 200,000 volt, main line, everything attached to it is done, smoked. So it's not just the substations, it's the actual wires, the grid, everything. The whole thing goes down. So as far as 911 2.0 is concerned, you can expect sporadic hits. In other words, they're not going to take down the grid and comms in the cities that they're attacking because they want everybody to know precisely what's going on. But you have Volt Typhoon, Salt Typhoon, and Silk Typhoon. Those are 3 very large CCP hacking groups that are part and parcel of 911 2.0, and they will turn the power off here and there, wherever it makes strategic sense. And if you don't have backup power, things might not be too good. Looking at how cold it is up north right now, I would hazard to guess a lot of people, once they lose electricity, have no source of heat. Yeah, some people have, wood stoves and fireplaces, but many don't. So at the end of the day, in addition to that, we've got all of these foreign powers that do not want us to regain oil dominance. They do not want us to extract the oil that we have, which are reportedly the largest reserves in the world. So you've got these jihadis on site here that as 911 2.0 unfolds and afterwards, there will be follow-on attacks forever. For our rest of our lives, our kids' lives, their kids' lives, etc. We, as Mike mentioned, there's tens of millions of illegals in the country. There's a significant number of them that are SIAs, special interest aliens. J.J. Carroll spoke at length about that. DHS says around 200,000 came in. An SIA is either a known terrorist or an associate of a known terrorist. So to think that this is a one and done, that's just pie in the sky thinking. That's not the way it's going to go down. So the follow-on attacks are where you're going to see infrastructure hit. You'll still see soft targets, but you'll see a lot of infrastructure hit. There's all kinds of intel out there. I'm not going to name them specifically because I don't want to get it wrong, but Cleed will when he comes back. And that's some pretty prominent bridges that are being targeted in the follow-on attacks. Just imagine, I'm not saying New York's going to get hit at all, but imagine if they took down all the bridges to the island in New York, the chaos that would cause. So in addition to that, you've got refineries that'll be hit. You've got logistics companies, so all of the trucking companies will be hit. And none of this is some sort of wild theory. We've known about this for a long time. This is not even unique to 9/11 2.0. This is post 9/11 2.0. So with that being said, let me go back to the boys here. And I'm going to bring you up, Mike, first. And I want to hear your thoughts on the logical attacks by these hacking groups versus the kinetic attacks of, bad actors that are physically here, and how much damage they both can do.
Well, I mean, we've discussed segments of this, but putting it all together, I think, look, a smart enemy is going to target infrastructure, cyber, and physically attack at the same time. I don't think we've ever seen anything like that because, in Afghanistan and Iraq, fighting in the global war on terror, we didn't have tech really integrated into the equation. The bad guys were using walkie-talkies, essentially. They were using ICOM communication. And so to have us be so vulnerable and to have all the elements that we are very complacent in, including, like you described, electricity, even sewage, I mean, every component of our lives that's so convenient because we have fresh water coming out of the faucet, we flush the toilet, we don't have to worry about any of these issues the rest of the world does have. Imagine when that is attacked. And it's not about inconvenience, it's in conjunction with a physical attack, which is already going to constrain your life. If you remember the pandemic, how much was our lives affected, impacted, and constrained on a daily basis? I mean, you couldn't go and stand in line without being 6 foot apart if you could go at all. So imagine that kind of situation. I saw it on Carnival's Instagram, the idea of like, hey, we forgot very quickly what this looks like, where people are going out taking all the toilet paper and paper towels off the shelf. Well, imagine those type of constraints in conjunction with physical attacks. It's a perfect recipe where like your world feels like it's falling apart, and it actually might be falling apart. Like you don't have fresh water, you don't have electricity, and now you're worried about being killed. And because you didn't prepare, you don't have any weapons, you don't have community, you don't have a tribe, you don't have first aid equipment. You leaned on your pharmacy, your doctor, your teacher, all these elements in your life that are now going to be constrained and completely wiped off the map. And how long will that last? Well, if it's a good attack, just like 9/11 in New York, I mean, we shut down the airlines for, I believe, several days. In certain parts of the country, it was shut down for several days. And in the big airports, that was unheard of, to like look up and not see a plane flying or hear a plane flying in the sky. Well, imagine that with all the cyber infrastructure attacks on top of it. I think it's a massive recipe for disaster. I'm surprised that terrorist organizations, and probably they weren't here yet, the bulk of them weren't here. I'm surprised they didn't take more advantage of us during COVID when everything was already constrained.
So you mentioned something there, and I want to explore it a little bit before I go to Jeff and then Randy. And that is Osama bin Laden's Bojangles strategy that he put together in the mid 1990s. And for those of you not familiar with it, it's a made up word. You can check it out, Bojanka. And what the plan was for jihadis to get on planes, for example, in Germany, put bombs underneath the seats, then get off in England, and then blow those planes up when they were coming in for landing over major cities, body parts, luggage, plane parts going all over the place to terrorize people. But as far as 9/11 2.0 is concerned, the intelligence says that there's probably going to be some people coming in from Europe, as I just described. There's probably going to be other people who hijack planes on the ground. And we have all of these elements, by the way, working in these airports. There were 2 ISIS guys arrested not too long ago at the Miami airport that were employees. So we've got an awesome audience, and the gentleman by the name of Will, he's a commercial pilot. He shared some information. And essentially, if somebody was to go and hijack a plane at an American airport and they didn't have support personnel on the ground, they wouldn't even be able to get it pushed back from the jetway. But the bad guys have all of that. So imagine those planes as well, flying at very low altitude over heavy populated areas and blowing up. So there's the next piece to it. And then I want to come back to you, Mike, that this will all be done with these so-called invisible suicide vests. So these are plastic vests that have liquid explosives in them. The only way to detect them is with millimeter wave scanners. Only 3% of our airports have them. It's basically the same technology that the underwear bomber had. They will go through the TSA checkpoints, and they will go through the overseas security checkpoints for a very big reason. When the investigation's done afterwards, they want everybody to know that they walked right through security, and that will shut down the airline business globally for an extended period of time. So I'm going to come over to you on that, Mike. Paint that picture of multiple planes being detonated with invisible suicide vests and what that does to our country, the world, the airline industry.
Well, I mean, there's always these tertiary effects, second and third order waves that kind of impact and affect our lives forever. I mean, look what happened post 9/11 with TSA. I mean, I just went through Dallas Fort Worth airport, and Lord, that is a horrible airport to go through. But I noticed the TSA employees, I was searched myself because I was flagged at my wrist and my crotch, which is typical. I don't know why. It's just something that happens. I always have that little bar of yellow on my crotch and on my wrist, and I pay attention to what's going on. And it's typically because I'm wearing a big watch and I got a big belt on. And every time I get searched, and we've become accepting of these more detailed violations of our rights and our liberties across the board. That's a microcosm compared to surveillance and all the things that have been leveraged against the American people. I mean, there's complete programs that have been identified recently that were targeting Americans everywhere. A former CIA case officer and chief that likely Jeff worked with came out and reflected on a CIA tech official who came out and blew the whistle on the CIA's capabilities. Those abilities going after potential bad guys are all violating our rights and our freedoms and our liberties, all in the name of safety. So it's like, what do you think is going to happen when invisible vests are detonated and they realize that they can't always detect these things early on? Well, guess what? You might not be able to get on a plane. You might have to go through a 50-step process. It might be hours in advance, a booking in advance. The entire travel industry as we know it now, and the flexibility and adaptability we have to do anything in this country that we call freedom to go from one place to another, could be constrained, could be eliminated, by the way. I mean, now driving around, when I see semi-trucks, I pay more attention because I'm like, hey, I wonder if that guy has a CDL from California and he's an illegal. And I see him drifting all over the road. He doesn't look like he's from here. Where when I grew up in the 80s, my uncles were truck drivers, and everybody driving a truck I knew was likely American. Now that's not the case. And so again, as we go down this road, outside of the scary that it would be, I see it second, third order wave down the road, how it's going to impact our liberties and freedoms. And you might have to wake up in a completely technological immersed environment where everything you do, you're going to get the violation ticket in the mail. You're going to be told that you can't leave your house because you're on lockdown. And that scares me more than a suicide vest on a plane, to be honest.
No, I appreciate that, Mike. Thank you. So I just want to quickly read this screen here. And this was a post that Rod Martin made, but it's not kids being dumb. It's coordinated, strategic, ideological, activists torching Dakota Access, substation shooters cutting power to 40,000, radicals targeting natural gas with IEDs, Hollywood supporting with movies and books. Jeff, I want to get your opinion on what you think the biggest blind spot is that we have in energy, whether it's gas, oil, electricity, or any other source of our power. You're on mute, Jeff.
I don't think it's the source of the energy. I think it's be it gas, gasoline, natural gas, or electricity. Gasoline, yeah, you can put it in a truck and move it. You can put it in a pipeline and move it. But electricity has to go through the grid. And if you screw up the grid, there is no alternative. You can try and reroute around an outage and that sort of thing, but it's still one option. You have the grid. You can liquefy natural gas, you can have propane, you can have gasoline and diesel in trucks and in trains and everything else. There's multiple ways to get it from point A to point B. Electricity, not so much.
Yeah, well said. Well said. So, Randy, coming to you next on this. Why are our leaders, why do they keep kicking this down the road? Why are they not addressing hardening our grid?
Well, I'd say it all comes down to whatever the plot is for these folks, the elite globalists, right? Because they're basically, whether it's the criminals aren't being held accountable, or even all these politicians that aren't being held accountable, or including all the Jeffrey Epstein's list and the people that are associated with that in a criminal way. I think it's just what the marching order is right now, because it helps, one, destabilize this country, and it makes all of us and everybody, your common folk, lose confidence in all of the federal agencies, including, our own government to a larger degree. It also helps keep everything separated. There's right now it's about separating people out, because you don't want everybody to come together on one team. Because really, if we didn't have all these problems, we'd probably start focus on more what the politicians are actually doing, and then you have to answer for it. But we just go from one big thing to the next, or one event to the next, one event to the next. And pretty soon you're down the road, just like no one ever mentions the Las Vegas shooting anymore. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or what happened with that. I think it's just the same, or all the media constantly covering the stuff that no American wants to hear about, and they're lying about everything. It's because someone told them to say that. It's no different than, apparently, and I don't know if it's been confirmed yet, that they got a list of all the senators and that are getting paid by Venezuela to look the other way, including the 6 that are on that made the seditious 6 list. Mm-hmm. And so, I think that's exactly why, because otherwise none of it makes sense, right? None of it.
It doesn't.
To average people like us, you're like, why would you do that? None of this makes sense.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, and I do have one caveat for Mike. It's called perspiration or temperature change. And I know this because now I'm an amputee. So whether I go through with my leg or on crutches or I go through in a wheelchair, I get what I call the red carpet treatment every time I go through the airport. And so I get searched every single time, and it's just the way it goes. And I have the same problem. And I asked the right one, I guess. And they said, no, it's probably because you're perspiring a little bit there. So it always, like where your watch is, and unfortunately your crotch area, because that's the same place mine always goes off.
So before we jump into segment number 2, how'd you score with the Titan X there, Mike? I could see you.
The what?
The Titan X, the Mantis X. Did you have?
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was doing it. You saw that?
Yeah, I saw it.
I was like getting my trigger reps in during the break. I did good. I did really well.
I bet you did. So we can see.
Well, tell CommiTube that it's a fake gun. It's not a real gun.
Yeah, this is fake. This is not real. This is a red shirt gun.
Oh, these guys are out of control tonight. Now we get Father Ducks and another 20. Thank you very much. And I saw Baked Alaskan, or not.
I'm sure there's more truth to that than we would like to know about the Patriot Act 2.0.
Yeah, I was actually going to touch on that as well. That if you go to any AI and punch in and say, what do you think the Patriot Act 2.0 will look like? It will paint a very, very scary picture, like very scary. So with that being said, I'm going to jump into segment number 2 and maybe speed things up here a little bit if we can. So oil and gas lines in the crosshairs. So picture this. You've got explosions ripping through oil refineries in Houston. You got gas lines bursting in the Dakotas, all in the same hour, not by accident, but by design from terror cells that know one good hit cascades into fuel shortages that grind the country to a halt. These attacks wouldn't just spike prices at the pump, but they'd mess with food deliveries, hospital generators, factories running, all because our sprawling pipeline network was built for efficiency, not for dodging bombs or hackers who treat it like a video game, basically. If you pull up a map of all of the pipelines in America, it's amazing when you saw them fighting over Keystone XL, that was just a very thing. But that one, we had to take it out, even though we've got a gazillion other ones. It was all political, of course. So with that being said, at that point in time, you're going to have all kinds of, call it fights going on worldwide, I guess, for who controls oil, who controls the delivery and transportation of oil, like Jeff mentioned with the electricity. Well, now you got to transport oil around the world, and like nuts, probably to the point that it's not affordable for many people. So it wouldn't take much to cripple us. If you take out Houston and south of that, like Webster, Texas, where you're into all the refineries, that in itself would have a massive negative impact on us. So with that being said, I'm coming back to you here, Mike. I'd like to get your opinion on what's the most vulnerable piece of our fuel infrastructure.
Well, I think the most vulnerable part is the refinement process, where the fuel has to be delivered, obviously, into our communities. I mean, besides the actual nest of where everything exists, being targeted and struck will completely eviscerate the entire grid of logistics completely. It happens all the time in natural disasters, of cutting the umbilical cord, whereby if you have a fuel depot in your local community, we have 3 or 4 gas stations here in Heber City, Utah, and they're obviously not getting fuel. Well, then where do you have to go to get fuel? Out of range of the capacity or capability of your vehicle and the fuel capability. So it's a dilemma where you could quickly lock down an entire community because they will not be able to go anywhere if you just shut down the supply chain to their gas stations. And by the way, every one of them is ran by electric power. Most of them are not on backup generators. So if the power goes out, and I've seen this personally myself, especially here in Utah, then you don't get access because your pump doesn't do it manually. It does it via card and electricity. So you can't pay for it. The cashier can't take the cash because she can't process it through the now electric only cash machine, where it used to be registers where you could open the register, transact with money. They can't even do that because it's an electric protocol. So they have to transact electronically. They're locked out. You can't do any exchange, and then you better have fuel on hand. I mean, it's such a fragile system. I've seen it break down completely, where I've gone in the gas station. I'm like, I have cash. I could pump because there's a backup generator, and then I can't pay for it because the lady can't open the register to take any other form, including cash, because she doesn't have enough change, or she can't transact because she can't track it electronically. And so she says, sorry, I can't help you. And then you just drive back home and stay at the house, because unless you have enough gas to get outside of your community, then you're not going to go to the next town over to get gas and hoping that you do. And by the way, that's a good opportunity to justify a drone, because if you could fly a drone to the next town, or at least close enough to where you could see, hey, is that gas station working? Well, then you could save a lot of heartache and waste, where you can only go one way, and then they don't have gas open, and then you just run out of gas, and then you walk back home. It's a dilemma for sure.
Yeah, that sucks. I was mentioning we seem to have lost Jeff. Actually, he had dinner, I think.
He had to go, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot.
I can't hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, I can't hear you guys. That's weird.
Maybe log out and come back in, but I was just going to mention, while Mike brought that up, Randy, I was going to mention the fact that I was a petroleum transfer engineer when I was in high school, and everything we did with credit cards,
Oh yeah, there was a different machine all the way together.
Yeah, it was a piece of paper, with the, what do you call it? What's that paper called that had ink on? I can't even remember now.
It's the carbon copies.
Carbon copy. That's it. Carbon copy.
Hey, we just got, this mischief managed. Trust me, you keep putting everything in caps like you're yelling at everybody. Here's reality. Our enemies already know all this information. And if you'd been listening all this time, you would know all the intelligence that's come out. So we're not putting out anything that's not open source, or we're not giving them any ideas. So, just stop.
It never fails. There's always somebody who pops up like that. So Mike, I was mentioning to Randy, I brought up, I don't know, a couple nights ago, that when I was in high school, I was a petroleum transfer engineer. I pumped gas at a truck stop, right? And I used to work the midnight shift because I get a premium. So I'd work midnights Friday, Saturday, Sunday, go to school Monday morning on no sleep, and go straight from the football game Friday night right to work, sort of thing. But I was saying to Randy, I said, man, back then, we just went with the credit card, piece of paper, good to go.
Well, nothing was electronic. And if you lost that piece of paper as the the merchant, the merchant, then you just lost the payment.
Exactly.
They had to keep up with those things. That was definitely a different time and era. No doubt about that.
So, Randy, let me ask you a question here. What do you think the effects would be if we had multiple refineries across the country all attacked simultaneously, just in terms of logistics and trucking industry?
Well, I think Mike described it pretty eloquently, or, he pretty much tapped that down. The reality is, people think, well, it's all these pipelines. You just knock out the pipelines and they can't. But the reality is it's the refineries where all that happens. So if you still have the refinery going up, they can make another pipeline or drive more trucks. So it's really, it would be devastating, and I don't know how many of them are across all the nation, but I know where I'm from, here in Texas, and that's where all of them are. Exxon, Mobil, Texaco, you name it. If they're in the oil business, they're there. And, in that area, you either work at Walmart or you work at the plants, right? The people that have the money and all the newer vehicles and the nicer houses, they all work at the plants. Everybody else works at Walmart or McDonald's because there's just not much out there.
For those people who've never been to that Webster area south of Houston, near the Johnson Space Center there. Describe what it looks like at night, Randy, because it's a sight to see.
Well, because all of those plants are lit up. They all have all kinds of pipelines and towers and things going back and forth and gauges everywhere, and they're 24 hours a day, so they're always lit up. And I certainly you come flying into that area. There's smaller airports there, so if you actually take that flight in there, or if anybody flew around in a helicopter, all you would see were all these refinery lights all over the place down there because it's extensive.
Yeah, for sure. So, Mike, I burned my chicken sandwich while Randy and Jeff and I were in here earlier. So I'm having my Wasatch Wagyu.
Every night. That's my snack.
You introduced me to this guy. Now I have a new friggin' habit. I can't kick the damn thing.
He just gave me a resupply the other day, and he's so generous. He gave me like a log of it this big, and I'm just like, thank you, Lord.
He is so generous. Yeah. I'll put some links in the chat later. WasatchWagyu.com. This is and I'm starving to death, so apologies for eating. But what do you think of that flavor, by the way, the dill pickle?
That's my favorite one, and he's doubled down on it. He's like, it's a popular one. It's dill and Wagyu beef. I've had one of his Wagyu steers that I've actually we processed ourselves here on my property, and it was the best meat I've ever had. I mean, these are premium Wagyu animals that are just like they produce the best beef. And it's not like beef jerky. I mean, beef jerky is like tack. It's like hard crap. And you eat that and you're like, and that's soaked in dill, basically pickle juice. And it's just, oh, Lord. I'm hungry too. I can't wait to get it before I go to bed. That's my nighttime routine. CBD, a little bone broth, and then a Wagyu stick.
I gotta be honest. I have extra here, but I don't share it with anybody. Don't touch my flashlights. Don't touch my jerky.
Well, the rest of us just have regular jerky, but it works too, Steel People, because really the reality is you don't have to like it.
Yeah, this stuff's amazing. So let's jump into segment number 3 here. The grid's breaking point. So, substations aren't exactly sexy, but they're the things that keep the grid up, keep the lights on coast to coast. All it takes is a couple terrorists to essentially snipe the transformers. So they're basically those buckets that you see are full of mineral oil. They're 1/8 of an inch of mild steel. Most calibers, maybe not 45 ACP because of the velocity, but most calibers will penetrate it. The oil leaks out, they overheat, poof, they're gone. It does not take much for this to happen. There's an average of about 24, 25 kinetic attacks per year, by the way, on substations around the country. Some of them have made the news. There was one in North Carolina, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago this time of year, just before Christmas. There's been a bunch in the Pacific Northwest as well. It's a very low-tech way of doing major damage. And most substations, as you probably noticed, and we have 55,000 of them, they are not protected. Most of them don't even have cameras, for crying out loud. They're so vulnerable that it just makes me shake my head. But anyway, Here's the thing, though, is if the jihadis go and attack this substation, there's a good chance that it takes down another substation because it ends up becoming overloaded. They actually get a force multiplication out of this because, as you know, electricity shorts out and it takes the next thing with it, sort of thing. So at the end of the day, again, very, very easy to take them out. You know, Jeff has spoke to this, and I'm curious for Mike and Randy to weigh in on this. A really fast way to take substations down, sprinkle aluminum on them, and it'll short everything out like strands of aluminum. And people have actually used this in war previously. I'm actually curious to hear Randy and Mike's experience if anybody's ever done that while they were in a theater of war. But basically, at the end of the day, our substations are so vulnerable. We've been pounding on this on Survival Dispatch for over 3 years now, and it just makes me shake my head. But with that being said, Mike, I'm going to come to you first, and I want to know if you've heard of, you know, people dropping aluminum, because Jeff said it's happened in wars previously where they use balloons and they just drop a whole bunch of aluminum ribbons and shorts everything out.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's going to create a connection and then short everything in between. Look, I think, 500-pound bombs work as well. I think a lot of this speaks to the fragility of the infrastructure across the board. All of these specific things, from power to oil refinery, are not looked at as something that needs to be protected, because up until recent history, it hasn't even been considered because the enemy wasn't living in our country. Now it's like, wait a minute, the enemy is not only living in our country, they're operating in our country. They're getting Americans to infight with each other, creating chaos online, and then hitting the streets, protesting on behalf of their country, their cause, their ideology in the streets of America. You see more foreign flags at these protests waving back and forth from different countries in America. And you're like, well, why don't you just go back and represent the country and fight for that country and its rights instead of fighting for those rights comfortably and complacently here in the country, like America. It's what's happening to the UK. It's what's happening to Australia and Canada. And it's disgusting to see. And again, like, this wouldn't even be a topic of major discussion if there wasn't 11 plus million illegals in this country, whom a lot of that have been identified are here for malice, intent, and reason. I mean, the guy who killed a National Guard's woman, a 20-year-old child, essentially, murdered her, and then she passed away on Thanksgiving Day, was from an illegal immigrant who just happened to be somebody who worked with the government, who wanted to get his jihad on. And he didn't do it with an AR. He didn't do it with a bomb. He did it with a pistol. He did it with a Smith & Wesson revolver, a .357 revolver. It could be done in any way. I mean, you don't have to have a balloon coming full of aluminum dropping over an oil refinery. Just take the semi-truck that you're likely driving and just smash it into the refinery.
Mike, how many guys would you guys went out and did missions?
We did split team ops a lot. I've done a lot of small unit stuff, so 4 to 6 guys.
How much damage could 4 to 6 guys do to substations? Let's say inside of whatever 4 hours.
Me and one of my guys, one of my Charlies or one of my breachers or heavy breachers can do it all by himself and wreak havoc. I mean, he could take trains off the track. He could take planes out of the sky, and for sure, an oil refinery or an unsecure objective is an easy target. And it's as easy as breathing.
Wow. Yeah. It's scary. Doesn't take much, does it? So, Randy, coming to you here. How long do you think that a multi-city grid takedown would last after they knock the shit out of everything? How long until the lights come back on?
Well, I guess that's going to depend. If we're talking about, what we've heard that, they'll take out all 9 of those substations that connect the entire country. I think it's going to be a very long time because we know they're built in China and we don't have any in the backup supply, and we would have to order some, and they're on like back order for 3 to 5 years. So that means a long, long time until I would say it's going to be a month or two at a minimum, and maybe longer until some smart folks get a way to patch it back together somewhat in specific areas. I would bet, would be the first thing. Or we'd end up going to just like what we experienced in Iraq or Afghanistan, they had roaming power. So all of our guys, what you just had, like when I was in the infantry and both at group, we had huge generators outside our where we stayed. And when the power would go off, those would automatically kick on and run until power came back to our section. So I think that may be a possibility, but a long, long, long time, I do believe, because, as we've mentioned, no one's done anything about it. Although the CIA has put out for the last 2 years, and that's not me making it up. That's legitimate. They put it out probably half a dozen times or more over the last 2 years that there's a major attack coming to the power grid. But yet we have done nothing about protecting it, upgrading it, or anything else. And oh, by the way, we know that these Chinese came in, and some of them are around those deals. So I wouldn't doubt when you had asked Mike earlier, yeah, we definitely would. In my experience, the only thing I ever saw was during the initial invasion, right? Because by the time I came back, it was a mature combat zone. You weren't blowing buildings up or anything like that, or taking the whole cities as we did during the invasion. But during the initial invasion, it was all done by artillery rounds. We would blast it a couple of times because every city has backup power, and they would we'd send out artillery rounds, and you hear them go off. You can see them going over you and into the city. The power would go down, then it would come back up on the backup. They'd fire one more round, and that was it. I saw that probably 2 or 3 different times. And so, but I'm like him. For that, any team, I don't care what Jodo or which group it's from, that would be very easy for a small team or even a couple of guys to do. And God forbid you have somebody that's good at hacking in there, right? That has some computer skills and can hack. You could do a lot of damage. But I don't doubt, and I don't doubt that the Chinese are sitting right next to those things, and the Chinese built them. So I have no doubt they probably got some sort of handheld device so they can go on a computer and hit enter and shut them all down at once. I have no doubt about that.
Yeah, well, they've bragged about penetrating all of our systems, of course, but let's move into segment number 4, rare earth minerals. And I titled this segment The Hidden Fuel Fight. So rare earth minerals aren't household names necessarily, but they're the secret sauce in everything from EV batteries to wind turbines, computers, everything, literally. And our supply chains are so tangled up with foreigners, especially China, that if you end up with no rare earth minerals and the jihadis and other terrorists take down big pieces of our grid, we don't have any of the materials even to rebuild it ourselves. I know somebody said we'll have to rebuild ourselves. We won't be able to count on them. And that's true, but you can't rebuild them if you don't have rare earth minerals. So let's take this to a whole nother level. And now imagine that you have coordinated sabotage on mines and mining ops and processing plants, because we have the reserves here. They've just been shut down for many, like decades, literally. But imagine that also happening outside of our country for the people who really want to put the hurt on the world, maybe those radical jihadis who think that Islam's going to take over the entire world, maybe. So with that being said, I mean, this would put us in a situation where everything's down. The raw materials aren't available to build out any new stuff. We are now back in the 1800s, literally. And I got to ask you, Mike, what does that look like? Like, if we have grid down that goes on for years, not months, what happens to the United States of America? You're on mute, Mike.
I think we're screwed, to be honest. I mean, a lot of our electronics, for example, gold, copper. I mean, copper is a great example because we don't really think about copper. We hear about it being jacked out of construction sites. I just was today picking up a Willys Jeep that I got. And in the back lot, there was these piles of tech trash. And I was like, what's up with all this stuff? And he goes, oh, his job is to go pick up all these small appliance electronics and pull the copper out. 50% of the copper in our country comes from Chile and Peru. I know because when I was a sergeant major in special operations, one of the countries we worked with was Chile. And I was like, why do we have a relationship with Chile? What strategic advantage does it give us militarily to operate with Chile? Well, it's because it's the biggest exporter of copper in the world.
Did not know that.
It's the same reason that right now we just, locked down one of the shipping ships out of Venezuela that was moving oil. I mean, we're locking that country down. Why? Because it's such an important component to our survival and resilience in our infrastructure. And so, I think it's 50% of the copper that we mine here is mined out of a couple states, including Arizona. Copper mines all over the place. Well, if all of your electronics are hit in an EMP attack, you have a hard reset. It's not just going to be, searching junk for copper lines. It's going to be desperation for everybody because you can't produce, you can't manufacture. And then, like a lot of good prepper apocalyptic style movies, they're all using old tech. I just bought a Game Boy off of Facebook Marketplace because I'm that guy. But it brought me back because the first edition of Game Boy in the 80s didn't have a light. And so you had to have an external light source in order to use that, more electricity, or just be in the sunshine with the right amount of contrast to see that Tetris block coming down. We've so quickly forgot how rapidly we've evolved and now have become completely dependent on technology. I mean, people are watching this. If you didn't have technology like the internet, your cell phone, your TV to watch any kind of content, do you have a reference for books? I just bought another first edition of a Foxfire book. There's several of them in the series. I believe it's 7 to 9. That's all about survival and preparedness, how to make a cabin, how to make a fire, how to survive in the woods. I think people need to take this more serious because it will not take a lot of a few things to happen in order at the right place at the right time to knock us back, to the 1960s.
What's it do to the population, Mike? If it goes down for 12 months.
Well, I mean, a lot of the population dies because, again, we're dependent on everything tech-wise. So if you got cancer, if you have ailments, if you have a burst appendix, if you're a diabetic, I mean, take all of that. That's a large percentage of the population. Half the population's obese. Take that. I mean, maybe that will change them in a better way, but take all the health issues that everybody's dependent on the infrastructure. Now they don't have the care. They don't have the means. They don't have the dependency. I mean, we're so dependent as a nation on everything. It's insane. So if you're a small part of the population who's more self-reliant because you've cut the umbilical cord and you're insourcing more than you're outsourcing, then you'll probably be on the right side of history.
Very well said, Mike. I want to just mention that I don't need that book that you've got because I've got this book. This
good book. I can't even find that damn book.
I know.
I'm trying to buy it for Christmas gifts. It's my book, and I can't even get it because it's all sold out all over the place.
Yep, Prepared, Mike Glover. We actually looked together for this, and I was like, "Hey, man, Amazon let me put like a bunch of them in my cart." He could only get one. I put something like 25, and he said, "Yeah, it won't go through." And so I did it. I was like, "Dang it, it didn't go through." But if you have a chance to get this book, Prepared by Mike Glover, I'm telling you, look how thick it is. It's about an inch thick. Some of these things are like encyclopedias. Some of them are really small. This is just the right size. It's kind of like Goldilocks, just different. So
I wrote it in crayon. That's why it's so many pages. So
well, I thought only Marines did that. I didn't realize.
No. SF guys do it too. 18 Bravos especially.
By the way, Greg, thank you to Greg Wasatch for feeding me tonight. I'm already on number. These ones are empty. I'm on number 3. So even if you were here, I couldn't share with you because I ate it all. But with that being said, Randy, coming to you here, same kind of question that I asked you last time around on the grid, but let's apply it to rare earth minerals. Why haven't we put any money into protecting ourselves from relying on foreign people, especially Chinese, for rare earth minerals? We can't even build anything if we don't have that as far as electronics are concerned.
Well, again, when you look at things on the surface, to normal people, it doesn't make any sense, does it? It doesn't make any sense at all. However, if you look at it from the other way, that some of this, we'll just say the Biden years, we'll take that for example. You couldn't make that many mistakes by accident, right?
Right.
You just can't make that many mistakes and be that stupid. And so it has to be intentional. So some of these, because I'm sure we have some, or we could have secured a better, let's say we talked about a couple of episodes ago about Africa. We let that go. There's a lot of rare earth minerals there. So you can only think that the only reason we're the only country superpower, like, between us, China, and Russia, that's not doing that, or doesn't seem to be, you can only say that that's intentional, because China and Russia don't have to be weakened. Their dollar doesn't have to crash, and their system doesn't have to unravel, including their culture, for these global elitists to do what they want to do next. The fact is, they have to crash the dollar. They have to break the United States financially and culturally and every other way, and take away all our rights before they can actually do what comes next, or what they want to come next. And I think that's the only way it makes sense. That's the only way it lines up, because otherwise it's just craziness. It's something that you would not do, period. I don't think anybody would do that intentionally to themselves, as far as us, the normal average day person, the way we think. So
agreed. And I've got one more thing I'm going to pull up and get Mike to comment on it, and then we're going to go to segment number 5. But here's a comment here: prep for your pets as well. Store up a lot of what they need. Keep them warm, close to you as well. Their family. Yeah, they absolutely are. We love our fur babies. I have a rescue right beside me here that she's hell-bent and determined to get my Wagyu jerky. And she's drooling all over the place. But with that being said, this is actually a good time to point something out. I've never mentioned it on the podcast, and I should. So our friends at Carnivalt, that make this amazing freeze-dried raw meat. So whether it's steak, chicken, or pork, 100% American, no mRNA, no antibiotics, no histamines, grass-finished, not just grass-fed. They make canine products as well. And I haven't mentioned that before. And they're absolutely amazing. So they make one is a topper, so you can put it on top of their kibble, and the other one are treats. And now, of course, as soon as I said treats, I have another pit bull beside. I have 2 pit bulls beside me now. Anyway, carnivalt.com, use discount code EATMEAT, all one word, not just for yourself, but for your fur babies as well. The mischief managed. Appreciate you bringing that up. So, Mike, I got to take us to the other screen here. There we go. I got to ask you about this. Chinese rare earth and magnet restrictions threaten U.S. defense supply chains. This was actually the first part of this whole rare earth thing that I heard about going back a few years, that they smoke us for that. All of our, advanced weaponry is at risk. What happens if they cut us off from that, Mike?
What is it says new rare earth. What are they referring to? And it says magnet. I think of rare earth magnets. Are they talking about some magnet technology?
No, they're talking about new restrictions that China's put on us.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, if you want to destroy a civilization, do exactly what they're doing and do it from all angles. That's the concerning piece here, is like, even in our discussions where we talk about the emerging physical threat, well, the physical threat is the most obvious threat, But what other threats exist? Yes, cyber is one of them. But I spent a lot of time in Africa and even in Afghanistan, saw the Chinese everywhere, and they're focused on the 100-year plan, the 200-year plan, and we're so short-sighted because we have it so well as the main consumer of the globe. We're so used to getting it conveniently shipped, delivered, and brought overseas. Well, guess what? The only way that gets shaken up and you see what it's really made of is when you put hard foreign policy in place that's going to make it fair for us, for example, in the tariff wars, the trade wars. And then you start to realize how quickly it all falls apart. NVIDIA is a great example. I mean, obviously, NVIDIA, the biggest microchip processor and tech company in the world, was manufacturing almost exclusively all of its chips overseas. And how did that change? With a conversation politically that likely would have never happened under any other president. I just listened to the podcast with the founder and CEO of NVIDIA on Joe Rogan's podcast. And he's likely a left-leaning dude, but he had a conversation, and now it looks like we're bringing more of that where it belongs in our country. And so I think if you want to constrain a foreign adversary, you look at all angles, and it's not hard to realize that they're in a war that is a long-term endurance race, and they're winning that because they're breaking and bartering deals in Africa, and we're not even thinking about it. Sure, we got a counterterrorism signature in Africa, but they're not worried about counterterrorism. They're worried about their economy and their people because they continue to populate them by the billions. And again, if you look long-term at our country, this experiment that we started, man, I don't see the prospect for prosperity for a long-term plan in America because seemingly we're so fragile across every avenue of our infrastructure.
Yeah, it's very discouraging. So we're going to go into segment number 5, last segment here. So gearing up and basically crawling out of the mess. So families basically need to stock up on a number of things: generators, water, so food, water, shelter, but get the power piece of it as well. If you can't afford a generator, there are other options. I'm going to have Mike speak to some of that stuff. But we've also got to make sure that we are exerting some sort of leverage at the polls and with politicians to do the right thing and finally protect our grid. I don't think we've got time to do it. I think that all hell is going to break loose long before that. And we should have been, hammering on this in years gone by. So with that being said, I just want to make the whole 5th segment tonight focused on the things that people can do right now to potentially weather an extended grid down situation. Let's call it 12 months of grid down. Randy, I'm going to come to you first. And if you could give me some ideas as far as lower cost, then moving up from there. And then Mike, I'll come to you right after that.
Well, I'm always a big proponent of getting a bunch of rice, huh? Get you 100 pounds of rice. Rice is still fairly cheap. You can keep it for long periods of time as long as you keep it dry and out of the bugs. Beans are the same way. You can get beans, Spam, tuna, the canned tuna and chicken. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff you could stock up on, but the most cheapest is going to be like rice and beans. And, militaries have been using that stuff for eons, and that's why. So that would be for food. 12 months is a long, long time to have to worry about. And, I think most people think, just for a couple of weeks is what you got stored up. You probably have a little more than that stored up at this point, and then just kind of ration it out. But, 12 months, that's a long time to try to prepare for if there's, if the power was down the entire time, because that's going to have an effect on pretty much everything, from pumping fuel to trucks driving around to people going to stores, buying stuff. We would see a big difference in that fact. If somebody put like saved rainwater, it's probably not a bad idea. And I would say store up as many batteries as you can, including all batteries, AA, AAA, Ds, whatever you use. I'd have, a bunch of that kind of stuff. And, of course, some radios of some sort. I don't know how you store up 12 months worth of water, but, store up as much as you possibly can, or people that live next to a lake, they're probably in a little bit better spot on that, certainly for a 12-month venture. Because, as what I said, if it's that bad, really the thing about it is the population is going to be decreased greatly. As I go back to the same example I always use, when we first came to this country, the first settlement was Jamestown. And after the ship left, 2/3 of the population that stayed behind to keep Jamestown running until the next ship came by another year or two later, 2/3 of them had starved to death or died of disease in the first 3 months. And I would apply that would be something, we would see something that's similar, if not more, just because, one of the things we also learned about populations was, or people being grouped in a lot, was probably further back. But, one of the most popular is like in the Civil War, when we realized, when people got sick in the camps, on both sides of the army, of both armies had the same problem with dysentery and some other things. So we learned the close proximity of a lot of people brings on more. So it may be more than 2/3, but we would definitely see a different situation.
So Arthur agrees with you. There's a
yes
vote for green eggs and Spam fried rice. I added the green eggs piece.
Yeah.
So Mike, do me a favor and bring the focus in to grid down power solutions for people, starting economically and then working their way up from there.
Well, I mean, economically, the first thing that people think is renewable energy, but renewable costs a lot more than just the basics. A diesel generator, an old school diesel generator off of Facebook Marketplace is going to do a solid, especially if it's running off of less refined fuels. If it's a diesel generator, more power to you. Most people don't realize it, but your car, most newer vehicles have inverters on them pre-built into them. My Ford truck has a 400 watt, 120 volt inverter. That is a generator because that allows you to power Starlink, a fridge, a microwave. You're not going to power a welder off your vehicle, but the point is then it converts your vehicle that's already existing, as long as you have the fuel, into the generator that allows you to power things that are necessary for you to advance your situation. I also agree just on Randy's sentiment of the basics and the necessities. A lot of people don't think about hygiene, and that's what's going to kill you quickest. Like you mentioned in Jamestown, being a Ranger School student, very young myself, and seeing guys almost, get kicked out of Ranger School for cellulitis, for example, which is a simple bacterial infection from not washing your ass, that will quickly kill you.
Wow.
A lot of things we take for granted. You get a appendicitis, and there's no hospital, you just die, unless you know how to remove your appendix and to do surgery on the fly, or you got a buddy that's a surgeon and you got the right tools and equipment. So it's a lot of the basics that people forget and neglect. A lot of people go, oh, I need food, water, shelter. You also need soap. You don't have soap and you can't wash your ass, you're going to die of a bacterial infection. And God help you if you get a virus, because then you'll just die. I mean, it will compound itself with bacterial issues and you'll just die. Again, we take for granted the basic necessities, the things that we can run to Walmart and get over the counter, or that pharmacy that you can run to get everything to treat everything. Well, you're not going to have access to that. So do you have it on hand? I used a couple companies, Jace Medical, the wellness company, TWC. There are places now, just like with peptides, you can go on and fill out a form and get all the antibiotics, all the anti-malaria, all the things. You can even get an EpiPen shipped to your house without seeing a doctor ever. What is that good for? Well, it's giving you access to things that you never had. In the worst case, or just because it's convenient. You know, if I have a bacterial infection, I know what I could use Google and ChatGPT and my own experiences where I don't have to sit and wait at the VA 5 hours to get a dose of Z-Pak, of zithromycin to impact some kind of bacterial infection. And so I think we always drop the ball when it comes to that. But I think a generator is a must. Looking at your vehicle and in the inversion of power, and then obviously having all the fuel stores to provide the fuel for all the generators because they require fuel.
No, awesome answer, Mike. Thank you. Appreciate that. So that wraps up all 5 segments. And at the end of the day, hopefully those who were not aware, our energy infrastructure, whether it's the grid, fuel, whatever the case may be, is pretty fragile, as Mike pointed out. And catastrophic damage can be done by small groups of, kinetic attacks. It doesn't have to be cyber attacks. And it would essentially put us back into the 1800s. Many people would not survive that. So in addition to stacking up on food and water and ammunition, I've got something to show you all in a second on that. But you also need to have something in place for some element of electricity. I had an emergency radio beside me here, and when I reached to grab Mike's book, it fell off and went somewhere into the abyss. So I was going to show it, but it's basically a hand crank emergency radio that does a gazillion different bands, whether it be, HF, like shortwave HF stuff, all the way through to AM, FM, et cetera, et cetera. But if you don't have any of that stuff, and let's say you don't have any dependencies, you're not, insulin dependent or anything like that, you have to have some way to communicate, some way to keep abreast of what's going on. And those little radios that you crank, you can get them for as little as, I don't know, $25, $30, something like, hey, somebody just ordered your book, by the way, Mike. They got it off Amazon. So they'll sell your book to everybody but you and me, apparently. Just,
Hopefully you could buy one.
That's, yeah, no kidding. So anyway, other things, to stack up on would be ammunition. Mike, did you get this stuff from Megs & Co yet?
I did. I thought it was food until I saw the bullet on the front. And I'm like, oh, that's creative.
I'm dying to hear what you and Keith Graves think of this. Did you check out? I'm assuming they sent you 5.56.
No, I think they just sent me 9mm.
I got this is 9mm here. The 5.56 62 grain is over 3,000 feet per second, which I thought was interesting. For consumer ammo to be 62 grains over 3,000 feet per second is pretty spiffy in my book. But anyway, Mike and Keith Graves are going to be testing the ammo out. I will as well, but not to the same extent as them. But keep an eye on this stuff. These guys are a really cool company. I love the way they package it. By the way, did you take the lid off, Mike?
No, not yet.
It's just like opening a can of soup.
Oh, that's the old school Pringles can. That's how Pringles used to pop.
You're right. And
that's right.
Pudding as well.
So this is for environmental control. So that you're
smart. So it's air sealed, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty dang smart. So anyway, we'll stand by on that stuff. I do have a discount code, S as in Sam, D as in David, 10 for 10% off, and it's megsandco.com. But we'll have an opinion on it within the next week or so. But I think it's going to be pretty good, to be honest with you. So with that being said, it's my favorite time of the night. So I got to get us over to this other screen in a second. And that is the Carnival Hero of the Day. And I am going to forewarn everybody right now, get a box of Kleenex. This one's it's a tearjerker. All right, so here we go. This video is something else. It's 2 minutes and 36 seconds. I don't usually play videos that long. I'm going to play this whole one because this is unbelievable. So Sonny Boy posted, he says, remember, anyone can be a hero. Anyone can be the one that makes a miracle happen for those who need it. Will you be the one that makes a difference in someone's life this Christmas? 2 minutes, 36 seconds.
Sorry, can I just check something real quick?
Did she just pay for her pumpkins?
Yeah.
Thank you. That was nice.
Merry Christmas. Oh my gosh. Are you trying to find her?
Oh, hi. Hi. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. You have a beautiful family. So beautiful.
It was more than you could imagine. We've been struggling so much with even the price of formula.
How old is your baby?
3 months.
3 months? Did you get formula today?
No, we have a couple cans left.
Do you want to go get some? Can we get you some formula? Yeah? Oh my gosh. Let us get you some formula. Oh. Just meet us right back here. We're happy to help you out. Yeah, you're welcome.
I'll go with my husband now.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, you're welcome. Just 2? Yeah, hold on. It's not enough. Let's go back. Let's go back. Let's go back. Let's get some diapers. There's at least a bunch of ones. Diapers. And more diapers. And let's see. Okay. Did we clean out their formula? Anything else?
Does he need anything else?
Okay, we're back.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, the total is $321.89. Happy Merry Christmas. We love you.
Bye.
Tell me that's not awesome.
That actually pisses me off. That I see that, and I see us sending money to Ukraine, and I see us spending all this money on these illegal immigrants. That really pisses me off. That you have any Americans that are living paycheck to paycheck like that, suffering while we're spending billions of dollars in needless wars, facilitating everybody else in the world. That shit pisses me off.
As it should. Randy, do you want to comment on that before we go to the next one?
Well, I was just going to say too, man, I remember, my son, when he was born, we had to get a specific type of formula. And I remember how expensive it was back then. And that was he was born in 2000. So I looked at the cart when she brought it back. It was $321. And I'm thinking, holy crap. Even how expensive that was just for what, and she got him a few things, obviously, but when you think about that, $321 really didn't go that far. A few packages of diapers, a few cans of the formula, and that was that. So yeah, I'm with them in the video. It's always good to see a video like that, and it reminds us that there are still good people out there.
There are. Yeah, there are. Thanks, Randy. All right. Conflicted question tonight, and then we'll wrap this thing up. So after being attacked by looters, Gordon felt that his young son needed to know how to use a firearm. Gordon's wife, Samantha, felt that the boy was just too young and could do more harm than good with a gun. If you were in the same situation as Gordon and Samantha, how old would a child have to be before you taught them to use firearms, and why? Go to you first, Mike.
When in a apocalyptic situation, I mean, it's as young as they have the aptitude to hold and pull the trigger in defense of their life. It could be a real precarious circumstance. Now, I'm not going to put a firearm in my child's hands without teaching them responsibly how to utilize it, but I think it's super young, man. I personally have 6-year-olds, and I wouldn't be comfortable having them have a gun, but if they needed to defend their life because we were in an apocalyptic type scenario, like the scenario lines out, then yeah, I'm teaching. I mean, I taught my son and daughter at the age of 3 how to be responsible around firearms because I wanted to be educated if they saw one and know what to do. And so they know to stay away from guns, especially daddy's guns. So I think it's as young as somebody needs to put that in their hand for them to defend life if necessary in that worst case scenario. And again, this is worst case scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. Randy, your thoughts on what age?
Well, as early as possible. I'll just take my example. Now, of course, I was born in the late 60s and grew up in the 70s, but I was shooting a pellet gun by the time I was 3. I believe I got one when I was 6. My dad gave me a 410 when I was 10 years old. But here's the difference, though. I was raised in a house with the same thing. If I went and got a gun out and played with it when my dad wasn't around, the ass beating I would have received, I'm not even going to go on and describe what that would be, but just imagine it wouldn't happen in today's time without my dad getting in trouble. But that's how serious it was. And and from an early age, I grew up with a healthy respect for guns, right? And that's what we don't have in this country. And far and wide, many people don't even and it's amazing how many times you see people now on Twitter and everywhere else posting things that make no sense because they really don't understand guns, ammo, or anything in between. And my last, I'll go to say that, it is an apocalyptic time, so that would be very early. And then last point, the respect that you build with that young, and as long as you keep that instilled in them, it goes with them. Because by the time I got to high school and all the way through my early 20s, when I would be hanging out with a bunch of other groups, or we had to be at a party somewhere, sometimes even out in the middle of nowhere, if we were all drunk and somebody started bringing out guns and playing with them, I left because, that's something you don't do. I've never done. I'm not going to go out and have a party out in the middle of nowhere drinking and everything else and then pull out a gun and think you're going to start having fun. And that's, we see in our inner cities, there's no respect for the gun. Why? Because they weren't grown up and taught to have that respect. And that is part of the problem. So that's my 2 cents.
True. Sorry. I won't add much more other than to say that we're all different. Children are different. And I would just go with Mike's as young as practical. They're going to mature at different stages, different ages. But as young as it's practical to do it, that's when I would weigh in on it. So that's basically it. Want to quickly mention our premier sponsor, Carnivalt, carnivalt.com. They're running a Christmas special right now. So every $100 you spend between now and December 23rd will get you a virtual raffle ticket. And 5 winners are going to be pulled on December the 24th. You're going to get a whole bunch of Carnivalt products. You're going to get Carnivalt swag. Pardon me. And everybody's going to get a lifetime Survival Dispatch News Guardians membership in addition to that. So if you go to carnivalt.com, code EATMEAT, get 10% off, except for subscriptions, which are already super discounted. And here's the next part that runs 365 days a year. If you buy over $99 in product from Carnivalt, and you email the receipt to me, support@survivaldispatch.com, and you are an annual Guardians subscriber, I'll tack on 30 days, each time that you send me one of those receipts. So theoretically, if you sign up for a subscription, you'd pay once, you never have to pay again if you had your Carnivalt coming to you each month. Other than that, final shout out to Wasatch Wagyu. I put the link in the chat. Code SD15 gets you 15% off. I think that's it, gentlemen. I think we're done for tonight. Mike, appreciate your time and insight as usual. Randy, always appreciate you through the week. Couldn't do this stuff without you guys. You guys are the experts. We'll be back tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, usual time. Next episode in our Long War series, and it's on bio and chemical threats and essentially weapons of mass disruption, engineered pathogens, chemical attacks, and everything else that is horrible that you can think of. Between now and then, please like, share, comment, subscribe. God bless America.
God bless America.
Enjoy the closing video.
If I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness. and I'd have a third of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree. Thee. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions. Just let those run wild. Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what'll you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich. I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism, in moral conduct. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on TV is the way to be. And thus I could undress you in public, and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure. In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing.